Okay, we are live. We should be live now.
All right.
Should have entrance music.
Well, hello. Hi, Rollie Atkinson. Hi,
Hello?
Janeen Murray of Go Local. This is me. I'm Caroline of Shop Local Healdsburg. Just wanted to say thank you for taking the time, inviting me to be a guest panel again, and to moderate this cocktails and conversation to sort of get a pulse check on our community and also see how we can kind of discuss current events, celebrate some wins, and also just talk about what supporting local and shopping local means right now. And thank you so much, Janeen, for also coming and collaborating and talking to us too about what you're observing in your industry, given that Go Local Sonoma County has been around for 12 years. So you're going to be able to give a lot of different perspective about your learnings and how you've seen shifts in small businesses and how they're pivoting at the moment. So, but the first thing I did want to just share is, given that it's cocktails and conversations, let's go around and, you can certainly go around, but let's go around the room and give an intro and also share what you're drinking tonight as we celebrate the next hour. And then we'll tell our audience members how we're going to break up this time. So Janeen, do you want to first share what you're going to be drinking or what you are drinking?
I'm Janeen Murray, Director of Sonoma County Go Local. And I'm going to be drinking this. It's a local non-alcoholic beverage for me tonight because these fires have been giving me headaches. And so I just want to, even though the air has been better for the last day or two, I am not wanting another migraine. So for this one, I'm going to bypass all the many delicious local cocktails we could have. So what I'm drinking is actually some revived kombucha, which started up in Windsor, and they grew their operations now to be down in Petaluma. And I also added a little bit of bitters by a local bitter company called Monarch Bitters. It's fantastic. Not only are bitters tasty, and you can add it to a sparkling water or something, but they're good for you too. And I actually threw in some locally grown Meyer lemons in my little non-alcoholic cocktail as well.
Nice. Local and local.
Yep.
Awesome. How about you, Rollie? What are you drinking? And please don't say bleach, because that is what you said. We're going to try. We're going to pull you out of the barrel. We're going to just kind of spin some positives here. But yes, what are you?
I thought we weren't going to disclose that. But.
Okay. Well, whoops.
So I'm every day I have a glass of rye whiskey, and I didn't turn my mirror on, but this is Alley 6.
You can see it.
Yeah, Jason, the distiller in Healdsburg, makes excellent distilled products. He's a go-to source. He's having a special events this weekend. You can go there. You can go there for he calls it booze and bontons. I never mix candy with my rye, but he must know something about flavors and taste. I don't, but. Go for it, Jason. It's outdoor tasting all weekend. Call ahead, get reservations. So that's what I'm drinking. And people know me or don't know me. I'm the publisher of the Hillsburg Tribune and 3 other community legacy newspapers, and an extreme radical devotee to shopping locally and doing everything locally. We don't. I've never crossed the threshold of Costco. I think they're good employers. I think they treat their employees quite well. But the consumer model and where my dollars go, if I leave them at Costco, I don't do that. So I'm a radical.
Okay. Well, so my name is Caroline Bontia. I created Shop Local Healdsburg late in April and launched it. It was really a tribute to this community, just to learn a little bit more and to champion the small businesses that I was really afraid would close, and just to kind of learn more about shopping local. And to be quite honest, I'm not the perfect shopper. I really do try to learn more and challenge myself and my husband as we go to farmers markets and learn the pros and cons of what convenience is over, what really sort of will resonate better for the impact of our community. And this is why I think it's been really helpful for me to get to know you, Rollie. And it's also been really great for me to learn a little bit more about you, Janeen, about how all of this really impacts each and every dollar that we use is almost like voting for your community. And I think that's something that we need to sort of relearn again and sort of champion. And so I'm drinking locally a house cocktail, which is HAUS. It's founded by a local Healdsburg couple, and I'm drinking their ginger yuzu. But I'm also drinking Corner 103 as well after this is done, and it's a BIPOC, locally owned Sonoma County winery here in Sonoma. So just wanted to give a shout out to Corner 103 as well. And so just to kind of lay down a couple of just...
What's yuzu?
Oh, I don't know. I guess it's essence, ginger essence.
Okay.
I should look that up, but it's delicious. It's delicious. And you can buy it.
I've heard of it. I'm an old, crudgy guy, but I've heard of it.
Okay, great. Well, I mean, I think maybe the first thing that we can touch on is sort of just gratitude, to just celebrate some wins and sort of gratitude, because when we were first brainstorming the idea of meeting up together and figuring a date, the fires occurred at Walbridge, so did the Hennessy fires. And I know, Rollie, you evacuated, and so did you, Janeen. And I think everyone wants to just sort of echo the gratitude for all the firefighters, first responders, healthcare workers, as well as all the local reporters, like Catherine, who's Sonoma West showing up on the screen right now, and Macy and others in the Tribune, who have been really working hard on different shifts and have also been on short staff since the budget at the local newspapers have been really cut short. So I just wanted to say thank you to everyone that have just been giving great resources and sharing that type of gratitude and just care during that really stressful time. And I also wanted to just give a shout out to Skip Brand of Healdsburg Running Company, who really championed and helped the Healdsburg Rotary Club to raise $42,000 by just simply continuously following along and sharing on social media how the firefighters and also a lot of the local restaurants and retailers were helping to feed our firefighters. So I just wanted to share, again, just the gratitude and thanks in terms of how the restaurant industry, the retailers have really come together to truly demonstrate Sonoma Strong. And I'd be curious to sort of hear from you too, Rollie and Janeen, in terms of how your reporters were able to, deal with that difficult time, and how you coordinated that, given that you were also evacuated, and also Janeen, like how were you able to sort of work with the small businesses that may have been impacted or had to evacuate? I mean, that had to be pretty stressful, and I just don't know what lens you were in at that point.
Yeah. Well, okay, I'll go first. So, unfortunately, we are well practiced at this, through 3 major wildfires from 2017 till now. We have an embedded infrastructure on how to do first response and build recovery and resiliency and rebuild. So there's physicality that we see where we go into the fire zone and we clear things out and we start to rebuild. We account for all of that. But, Caroline, you're, mentioning Fred, et cetera, it's prescient because there's other parts to that infrastructure that feeds the troops, that does emergency supply chain lines, et cetera. We have that built now. I mean, it's starting to get in our, I don't really like this phrase, but it's getting into our DNA. We could repurpose that on an everyday when we might even think we might get back to some kind of normal times. We could repurpose that into what would be more of a shop local and a loyalty to your local economy, because in times of emergency, we can make 6,000 burritos in a half a day, and get them out there. You know, those kinds of efforts, you know, that need's going to continue. We have local small business owners that need that kind of supply chain and support to continue. And we have kind of a practice infrastructure. We might want to think about how we can redirect, repurpose it.
It's a great idea. How about you, Janeen? What do you think?
Yeah, I'm with you, Rollie. Fortunately, my work isn't in the trenches. I'm kind of on the phone and by email and meeting with some businesses, but as far as the fire went, you know, I can do a lot of my work from anywhere, but my job to me is more supporting, learning and sharing stories as much as I can, because that's one of the things that I'm, you know, it might be a love and hate relationship, but I am currently very grateful to the aspects of social media, digital information that can share, be shared in a non-traditional way. And so there have been some real inspiration stories and that we've been able to hear about, you know, like the nonprofits that have swept in, like Corazon Healdsburg and Feed It Forward Sonoma, who have stepped in to make food available. I also want to share gratitude to agricultural workers who have not just dealt with the fire, but the air before and after. And so there's just so much magic that's gone on. And a lot of times I'm just trying to help find out about it, share it, and make sure that we as a public feel connected with the good as well as the challenging that's going on right now.
Yeah. Thank you again also for reminding us about all the farmers working out there. It's harvest season in Sonoma County. The reality is there's a lot of work happening behind the scenes for someone like myself who isn't part of that agricultural work, but gets to sort of work with a closed window and connect to the internet. I mean, these are things that I think I really appreciate when I go to a farmer's market and I actually see people there. It just feels like I'm really connected to my food. I'm connected to people, and it's just something to really be proud of in this community. And so one of the things I think is pretty obvious for all of us that are thinking about this, right? Like the economic impact of what's happening with COVID, the pandemic within the pandemic. I think we listened to, and you invited me to sort of join the conference earlier this morning to listen to Dr. Chris Thornburg discuss the Sonoma County and economic development sort of forecast. Can you share a little bit about, you know, your findings there and what your takeaways are?
Sure.
Just so that we can get a pulse check on what that sort of means for our community.
Yeah, just for a very little bit of background for anyone listening is that Caroline, Rollie, and I all were going to take a listen to this morning's Economic Development Board economic forecast. They do it every year. This guy, Chris Thornburg, has done it for several years. And we thought, you know, there's a lot of people who are very curious what this economist has to say nationally, statewide, and looking at Sonoma County as far as what we can kind of expect and possibly predict in this very unpredictable time. And, you know, one of the big takeaways I got today was that, you know, we have that this time has been equated a lot to the Great Recession of 2008, 9, 10. And that it's a very different experience, that this was a very large, rapid recession that was due to non-economic circumstances. It was due to health circumstances. And that in that case, it's behaving very differently. And he doesn't think that it will be sustained for nearly as long as other past recessions. He was pretty favorable, just looking at all those economic indicators nationally, statewide, and around here for Sonoma County in general. He was kind of saying we're going to rebound pretty fast. that doesn't really take into effect our deeper understanding of Sonoma County or the importance that some of the industries are going to be impacted and already are impacted so heavily, which they're so important to Sonoma County, which is retail, restaurants, tourism, and transportation and accommodations. So there was some good news, and also it was very sober because, oh yeah, those industries that are going to have a problem, oh yeah, that's really strong here in Sonoma County. So that was just kind of my overall takeaway, is that also he kind of shared that the harm that's happening to the economy is happening now during COVID, as opposed to a recession where it kind of the indicators build and then the harm happens 2 years later or something. This is his thought. I can't say, but that's some of the information that I took in that was somewhat encouraging.
Yeah. And how about you, Rollie? Do you agree?
Yeah, Janeen's analysis is pretty right on. I pretty much agree. I mean what Chris said, and he's been doing this for 17 years, once a year in Sonoma County, taking this look at our local economy. So he has a track record, and he's been pretty right on. He was very clairvoyant, really, in the 2008 housing bubble. He saw that in 2006, and so you have to give him high regard that when he says this isn't like that at all, and it's not like that at all. So what he's saying is, he depicts it as a V recovery. So it's kind of like this. I mean, the economy, the national Californian local economy was doing very well. I mean, it's one of the best economies ever, generally going through last year, humming along, and then it just drove to this cliff. It didn't see this invisible cliff, COVID, and so it fell down in the cliff, and then it said, well, wait a minute, so we're going to come up and get out of that, and we'll go back and we'll be humming along just like it was before, because if we contain the disease and minimize the effects, everything's going to be the same. So that's what I would recommend to all local businesses and everyone else. Then picture yourself as where you were in January 2020. So go back to that. What was your business plan? What did you anticipate? So you had this 6-9 month blip, and what were you thinking about? What are you going to do? Because that's what you're facing right now. So like Janeen said, if you're local retail, you already had severe challenges before this. I mean, we're kind of oversupplied in restaurants. I mean, it's a very competitive, and it's a really strained business model. Some people do okay, do fine. A lot don't. A lot scratch through to make a living wage. Tourism, we're probably top heavy at one level, and as Chris Thornburg said, you have a social problem with your tourism. He didn't say, I'll just put words in his mouth. He said, you're not paying your service workers enough. They're not getting living wages. You need to correct that. He didn't say any of that, but I heard that.
Yeah. I heard that too.
Yeah, that's a social problem. And then there's specific little industry issues. I mean, just to be selfish, newspapers were struggling before, as local small retail businesses suffer, newspapers suffer. So, there's specific industry problems.
Mm-hmm.
Going forward, he mentioned one other thing, and he said, he said two things. So I'm going to give him some good creed here. He says, wear your damn mask. So
wash your damn hands.
And that's number one for anything you do. Control the virus. If you want to improve the economy, control the virus.
Yeah.
But I want to get your take, Janeen and Caroline, on this. He said, I think he said, and I didn't write it down, I think someone asked him a question, does it matter who gets elected president? And I think he said it didn't matter. You still have a political problem that supersedes your economic problem. And I'm not quite sure what he meant by that, but I think in Sonoma, I think we need to, we have a public health problem. We have a political problem. We have a social equity problem, and the economic problem. We don't have an economic problem. We have those other three problems.
Yeah. I definitely heard that, but I didn't hear him exactly say it doesn't matter who you vote for, but he was very aghast with the fact that we've politicized wearing masks, right? Like he is very much about trying to reopen and create public safety and discussions, like being able to come to a room like we are now, to have difficult discussions and possibly compromise, which is what he said, right? Like not necessarily be so bipartisan, but to come together. Anyway, that was my takeaway. Janeen, maybe you heard differently.
I heard that as well. I heard when he talking about the president in the election, I think he went straight into majority leaders in House and Senate. So kind of he was seeing it as that as far as bills. I mean, think of him through the economist lens. So he's thinking about bills being passed through Senate and House and basically where that can happen. And basically it's all going to get continue to get stymied when there's such partisan division. That was my interpretation of what he was saying. I also, I think it was kind of fascinating and also not surprising that he shared that he predicted the Great Recession and got all this press, got on CNN about how he predicted the recession as an economist. His company got great, press for all that. And then he communicates now that he's predicting that this recession's already over. It significantly happened more in February through April, May, and that we're already rebounding, and that he's still taking it to the same national media outlets, but nobody wants to talk to him. And his quote is miserableism. That is a component of media and of coverage of COVID and the economic crisis we're in right now, which I'd be curious about your thoughts, Rollie, just because there's reality. I mean, we struggled with it in planning this talk. There's so much good going on, but there's a lot of hard realities. And so what do you think about miserableism, Rollie?
Well,
media.
Oh no, can we please get a sip of drink right now? Janeen, you're getting the fire, please. I'm gonna have to switch to like hard alcohol right now.
He's switching it up.
No, my ears were full. I was listening to that. I mean, Chris Thornburg's a scholar and and he has a doctorate and he's an economist, and that discipline is called, the dismal sociology. I mean, it's the dismal discipline. I mean, that's what they're supposed to do. So I don't know. I think he's turning on his own there to call them the miserableists. I mean, that's what they call it. And his response to that he's not getting callbacks or whatever to push out his message that we're just in a V recovery. I think two things supersede that. I wanted to let me try to summarize. Do it this way. I was going to post a question to him, in the chat corner, and so I'll post it now, and he doesn't have to answer. He's not here, but I wanted to know if, because he ended on we have a political problem. He said that we have a political problem. So I wanted to end it on this. Does politics determine our economics, or does the economics determine our politics? So he has to get out of his discipline to answer that. And in these unprecedented times of politics, of a divided nation and an extremely unpredictable, unprecedented presidency, et cetera. You know, how could you be any kind of a scientist, economic or otherwise, and think that you know by your data and your statistics that you know that the economics isn't going to just skew your numbers right away. I mean, you know, forgive me for evoking a name, but President Trump could do something tomorrow, you know, next week that takes this economy entirely off the rails. He could do that, you know, with a tweet or the stroke of a pen, and you know, all those models would go away. So I think, you know, and I think Chris and I agree, we don't have an economic problem, and we were doing just fine. We were doing great, but we
I
have
think that this actually what you're talking about, it actually brings me back to the work that you do in my mind, because it has become such a complicated landscape between economics and politics and health right now even. And some of his word miserableism, I was kind of associating it with media coverage. And it kind of brings me back to the role of actually effective and responsible media, which is what you do. And I think that helps us to all parse out what's going on in the world and to kind of reprioritize and make sense of facts and situations. And so basically, I wasn't paid to do this for you, but I do believe that that your work is so crucial for us to all make sense of what's going on locally and in. I love your editorials because you help put things in perspective that are sometimes almost impossible for us to do right now. So thank you for that.
Yeah, let me quote Chris. He didn't mean to give me a testimonial, but you know, please affirm for me, Caroline.
Yes.
Janeen, that he said this today. He said, you know, turn off that 24/7 news feed, that CNN and MSB, and go read your newspaper.
Yeah.
That's what he said.
Good.
Yeah, go read your newspaper.
Yeah.
And he said to be intentional. He used the word intentional.
Yeah, you know, and understand and know your source, and you know, and be discriminative about it and test it. You know, so he said that. I wanted to. This is a, if I may add, Caroline, because I wanted to, you know, back to first responders and kind of overview stuff. You know, our news reporters, you know, in times of natural disasters and in times of no disasters, what I saw again from my reporters and our staff is, and I don't want this to get lost, because right now a lot of the information that comes out of where the fire is spreading, what's the impact, you know, how many COVID cases did we have today, you know, if we go to some place where we only rely on government information and sources, that's not a good thing. I mean, as much as we trust them, they need to be checked and balanced. I mean, you need independent journalists to check them. I mean, if they're doing a great job, then leave it to us to say so. But you know, Catherine, Heather, all of my other reporters, you know, that have gone beyond the fire lines and checked these numbers. I mean, it's quite a different thing to get it from an official source versus to get it from an independent fact checker. So don't go past the glow that, you know, it's this, they're telling the government, you know, the newsletter from James Gordon, Linda Hopkins or whatever, saying, you know, and they're great and they're transparent, but, you know, and they're both my personal friends, but there's parts of their newsletters they left out. Now, you know, do you want me to go on for one more second?
Sure. Go for
Okay.
it.
Okay, so those guys passed a budget on Friday for $1.9 billion, and they backfilled it, and they reported out that they have a great balanced budget, and they didn't have to lay anybody off, and we got past that. That's what they said. That's not what happened. That's not what happened. They kicked the can down the road. You know, they're facing, you know, $35 million of deficits over the next 4 years, despite what Chris Thornburg said. As we know, as what he said was local governments. He said that today. Pay attention to your local governments. They're going to get hit hard and need help. So independent journalists are holding them accountable. You know, I wrote my budget story this week, and I brought up the fact that the county pension plan from January to June this year lost $375 million in its portfolio. I mean, that's a big number, and that has a general budget impact. And they didn't talk about that.
Mm-hmm.
So that you need, you know, that's my commercial for, please shop local.
Get informed too, and taking action.
And support your local newspaper.
Yeah.
Right. Definitely. It's definitely important to champion both. So thanks, Rollie. We are getting some audience questions. But before I do, and maybe it would be a good segue to just talk about, you know, what does shopping local really mean? And I'd love, Janeen, for you to share a little bit more and dissect, you know, when we say shop local this, buy from here. Mm-hmm. Could you break down the economic sort of breakdowns of how does $1 or my $100 buying, say, from Shelton's, or buying takeout from El Farolito or Healdsburg Running Company sort of affect the economic system of my community in Healdsburg and Sonoma County? Could you just break it down by dollars so that we can truly visualize the impact?
You bet. I'm actually going to backtrack a little bit for people who may not be connected with Go Local. Is that Go Local is a Sonoma County-wide a network of locally owned businesses, organizations, and government agencies. We've got about 450 members. They all work together and use a shared brand. And that shared brand has, over these dozen years, have garnered like billions of media impressions. So basically, if you are a business by yourself advertising, you have to pay dollars to advertise. But all these businesses use this shared brand, add it into their own advertising or signs or billboards, and it has a shared message that's stronger by working together. And so, the underlying message of that Go Local, Shop Local, Bank Local message is this impact that it can make, is to remind consumers, which it actually was very intuitive 100 years ago here in downtown Healdsburg. You knew that when you had to shop at the local hardware store, but you also knew that you were supporting the jobs of those employees and of their accountant or bookkeeper, and that your dollars you could even see the impact of when you supported that business. It kept them from going out of business. And I think we've gotten just a little bit detached in the way that we spend our money in our global economy, so that we kind of forget. We look more at convenience and the commodities that we want to acquire, and kind of have forgotten. And so Go Local's job is to help remind people of that direct economic impact of those dollars and how we spend our dollars. So to get to that very simple kind of equation, which is that local impact, is in general 2 to 3 times more of the dollars we spend are recirculated when we spend them at locally owned independent businesses as opposed to non-local chains. And then in contrast to that, imagine spending your dollars online with a non-local retailer. Imagine those dollars, that $100 you might spend is going up like a helium balloon, leaving our region and never coming back, because it's going to some other business that is headquartered elsewhere, and they're taking your money and benefiting from that profit. So so on average, if you spend $100 at a local retailer, around 3 times more of that gets recirculated in the local economy. So if you spend $100, $45 of that gets reinvested in the local economy, as opposed to only about $14 when you spend that same $100 at a non-local chain or something like that. So there's kind of, and it depends on the industry, whether it's a 2-time or 3-time effect. It just depends on whether it's a restaurant, kind of the cost of goods sold, all that. But overall, you're thinking you are recirculating, you are making your dollars go farther. And I shared in your blog an example, a great example of Oliver's Market. They've done such a good job of actually documenting this. And they had a study done to say that for every 2 jobs that come from Oliver's Market, 1 additional job gets created in Sonoma County. That's so, and if you think about it, you spend your dollars at a local grocery store and you buy local products, you are not only supporting the grocery stores, all of the printer, all of that delivery people, all that, but you're also buying products that are supporting more jobs that are your neighbors and friends. So, to make it really simple, 2 to 3 times more positive local impact when you spend locally.
That's really great. Thank you for sharing that. And for folks who want to learn more about the Q&A that I asked Janeen to complete, it was just posted today on Shop Local Healdsburg, and also just go to Go Local Sonoma County, where you provide so many helpful resources on the sort of behind the scenes and the economic value that buying local really does support.
Can I add a few other, because there's the economics, but then there's also all those other things, all those other benefits. There's actually studies that regions that have a stronger share of local businesses actually have more equity, more social equity in their community. So it really embraces and encourages diversity in our economy, economically and socially. There's also, so we talked about job creation. We also talked, there's also the community impact. Local businesses are more likely to support nonprofits and to live in their community and just do more of that giving and contributions that actually benefit our community in different ways. They also are invested in decision making on our councils and in our government. So they, as opposed to a business who isn't located here, they don't care as much about the future of our region. And then there's also, it's just better environmentally. When we can buy products and services locally, it has less of an environmental impact as well. So those are some other.
Can you also talk about local banking?
Yes.
As well, because that's a pretty important aspect. And I credit Rollie also for like making sure that we highlight this as well. Can you share a little bit more?
There's all of those things all those things that I just described, but then add in, think about if any of you listeners own a business, then you'll know, but if you don't, think about what a business needs to start and sometimes to continue in times of crisis is capital. And so there's a tremendous disparity, a difference between the top 5 banks and local banks and credit unions. In that local banks and credit unions do so much more commercial lending for small business. So and this kind of came up in COVID, but it's happening all the time, is that a small business needs some funding. They need some support. They're going through a hard time. They need help. It's the small, local, regional banks and credit unions that like 3 times more are likely to fund those businesses. And what that does is it actually keeps those dollars recirculating locally, because that's helping those businesses to then use local services and grow. Of course, there's all those other aspects that kind of make sense and they seem fluffy, but they're really significant. And that is a local bank and credit union will provide more connected community service and more value add in general, often for their members, and much more connected in the community. And so they're invested more in the community, and they're investing those their deposits more locally. So it actually creates more wealth when we have a stronger share. And fortunately, Sonoma County is doing pretty good. We have some really strong local banks and credit unions like Exchange that has this over century history, Redwood Credit Union, Community First, Summit, and many more.
So is that a positive? Can we also just have a little social with that?
Cheers.
Cheers. Before we
our local
Yeah.
financial
Yeah,
institutions.
Sure.
Not very
Yay.
true.
I think that's Janeen, thank you. I think that's a real underutilized asset that we have in Sonoma County, the independent and the community banks. I mean, yeah, I don't know that much financing, but there's probably oh, I know that I know of magnitude. There's more than $1 billion. There's probably several $1 billion of money that we're exporting out to Wells Fargo, Bank of America, et cetera, that if we put in local depositories, in our local community banks, I mean, everything Janeen just said would just be exponential. And I, Carolina, the next time you host one of these events, I would like it to be on local banks and financing, and how we can cooperate on that. I think there's a huge opportunity, but we have to start the conversation. I mean, Janeen knows more about the People's Bank movement, et cetera.
Public banking, yes.
Public banking, yeah. And then and then there's a little piece that comes into there around the cannabis dollars that have to come in. I mean, that's another many millions of dollars that could provide jobs, food and housing.
I'm pretty sure that North Bay Credit Union, which is based in Sonoma County, was the first financial institution in California to actually bank with cannabis companies.
Yeah.
So we're really, that's awesome. They really saw this need of the cannabis businesses that were now legal in California, still had to stash their cash. And so, it's only smaller, more regional financial institutions that understand the needs of the region and will step up and do that.
Yeah. I think it's doable. I think it's right in front of us. I think we could be working on it. I think someone needs to take, leadership and commitment to do it and start the dialogue. I think it could happen.
I agree. And also it makes me think about some of the things I've been reading about how to support local businesses during COVID. And there's this one report, it's 10 pages long, and one whole page is allocated to the importance of local community-based funding support for local businesses, that we can't rely on national, federal programs only to help out these businesses, and that it's up to each region to do that. And I don't know if you heard this morning, but Economic Development Board said that some of that budget is going to be allocated to a local business grant that we'll be hearing about soon, I'm sure, for Sonoma County, in which there will be grants available between $2,500 and $15,000 increments for local businesses. So that's helpful. And I'm just in like 2 sentences, I'm going to say I'm developing a local business recovery fund as well. I'm working to raise $75,000 that could directly benefit 75 to 150 businesses. And I'm trying to get that funding by the end of September. We need many of these different options that can help businesses to get that extra digital marketing support, get that photography for their website, shift over to an e-commerce website, do the things that are essential to help support them.
Yeah. Let me, if I may, Caroline, because what Janeen said, so that's a $2.5 million fund, and they're going to fund $2,500 loans up to $15,000 loans to expend all that $2.5 million. But tomorrow the Economic Development Board is hosting 2 listening sessions at 12 noon and 6 p.m. So, I hope to attend and sit on whichever one I can, but I would recommend everybody else do that too, because you can create that agenda and what the priorities need to be, because they're asking, it's business recovery, where are the needs and where should we put our efforts? So
Yeah.
that's happening tomorrow at noon and 6 o'clock.
Can the Tribune share the link or the information on that on your page so that people can know how to join?
I'm sure Catherine
Okay.
can do that.
Thank you, Catherine. Well, we have less than a 15-minute time check, and I do want to get back to a couple of questions that really does tie to the issue of how to support small businesses. So we do have a question from Martin Silge. I hope I'm pronouncing his name correctly. His question is, how do we get back to the Latino-owned small businesses that have disappeared? Our neighborhoods have been hit disproportionately by COVID. And I do want to also mention it's Latinx month. Our community is also comprised of a third of Latinx community. So this is definitely top of mind for all of us. But how do you recommend that we help support those Latino-owned small businesses?
I'll be happy to chime in. Just before this call, I'm a part of the Sonoma County Food System Alliance, and we were getting a report from Zeke Guzman, who's a part of Latinos Unidos, sharing the plight of local farm workers who are not able to work right now. And also so basically what he kind of boiled it down to is two major problems in Sonoma County that we have. And one is access to healthy and safe food and housing, and access to affordable housing. And so this man, Martin, was asking about how do we take care of the businesses that have closed? Well, what we need to do is we need to be sure that they have somewhere that they can live and healthy food that they can eat for their families so that they can get back into whatever work it was that they were doing. And it's huge, it's massive. And I think it's there's the National Black Lives Matter, but for us, this is our Sonoma County, Lives Matter right now with these crises, agricultural workers and the crises that they've been facing, hitting them even more. So to me, I think all of us need to make a decision about what kind of voters we want to be in the world, whether it's not just on the ballot, but it's calling in to our city council people, our supervisors, and ask what we can do and kind of make suggestions and support the community. There's still the UndocuFund .org website in which people could donate. And Zeke actually said that's the best way that you could support people in need. Our own Healdsburg local business owners have been providing food trucks for some of the people who are out of work up in Cloverdale. And so not just for fire response, but for those people in need. I'll not talk too much more, whatever else Rollie might have to say.
Well, let's go back near the top with Chris Thornburg's message today on the economic update. He never said the word Hispanic. He never said Latinx. I mean, he noted in passing there's a social problem, and that was his nomenclature for, I think, the service workers, etc. So, if all of our Sonoma County prominent business owners walk away with that message and never thought about that population of workers, then we're in trouble. And so, we need to keep mobilizing around diversity and equity issues. So there's a point number one, and I will say I've only gotten into 3 paragraphs of my news report on that report he gave today, but paragraph 5 or 6 is going to prominently mention that in Sonoma West Publishers' coverage, because that's a crucial event that we can actually make a difference and change if we keep it top of mind, as Janeen was just just saying. You know, the other point is it's, you know, beyond it just being part of you know, everybody enduring the same thing at different levels and different impacts. I think we're doing a good job in Sonoma. We're starting to do a good job in Sonoma County about unity and unifying. We shouldn't give up right now. I mean, you know, I saw a lot of young people marching in the streets in May and June and July. I haven't seen them in August and September. You know, I think they need to keep marching. You know, they need to keep it top of mind. And if they do, then our newspapers will keep reporting their voices and their messages.
Wow. That's really inspiring to hear that you're saying this, Rollie. And maybe this helps to also answer the other question that we had that came online, which is, which businesses do we really need to support right now? Maybe, I don't know if you have any thoughts or whether or not we personally have already answered that question.
I have a thought.
Mm-hmm.
Which local businesses support?
Yeah. That really need our help right now. Like what type of businesses?
Yeah, your local newspaper.
Yeah. Yep.
Sorry.
True.
That's not being selfish. I mean, that's an honest, direct response. I mean, you know, going back to, you know, do you want to just take the government's information, or do you want someone to fact check it? Well, that's who we are. We're the fact checkers, and the first responders are all doing great work. They're all heroes. We get that, but there's a lot of follow up when there's going to be bureaucrats that come in, and who's going to regulate how they're going to change the policy on how they do forest management and where they're going to allocate dollars to do this or that. No one's gonna be, you know, occupied about that, except, you know, the local journalists. We're on it.
Yeah.
Yeah. And
we're members.
Sorry, go ahead.
I was going to say we're members, so
I know.
I'm sold. And cheers to that. So thank you, Rollie, and your team, and Catherine as well, who's online.
And probably most of the listeners are fans already of the Healdsburg Tribune, but if, in case anyone doesn't have the perspective on local media, is Sonoma West Publishing has the very unique and important role of being one of the only media outlets in Sonoma County who has, to me, this is my opinion, such integrity from the top all the way through the organization. And there are other local media outlets that have integrity in their in many areas, but it's not necessarily all the way through. I'll just leave it at that.
No, and it's true. I mean, I think in my research, Rollie,
I know about that.
wasn't the Tribune founded before Healdsburg was incorporated, right, as a city, which really says a lot about how the community at the time needed a platform to be able to exchange information, and communicate. So I think there's certainly a lot of value historically, and that's something that we need to continue to unwind and reconnect with. So I really do appreciate you inviting us to have that conversation with you. And I love that your team is starting to champion how to digitally connect more with your viewers and your readers so that we can hear from you exactly what the struggles are with local newspaper and how you are keeping the checks and balances with local governments and national news.
Yeah, so here's a I could offer some helpful advice and some tips. So here's how we're Sarah and myself, my wife and I own Sonoma West Publishers and the 4 newspapers. So we're essentially a private corporation, and we're a market-based company that in the past has lived off of advertising revenues, et cetera, and that that business model's changed through impacts from internet. This is not COVID. This is all pre-COVID. But we've been working for 2+ years to change our business model, and I would recommend this to restaurants. corner shops, mom and pa's. I mean, I think we all should look at our business structure. Um, for us at Sonoma West Publishers, we're converting to a nonprofit institution on January 1. We're converting from private ownership to a nonprofit status with community ownership, community involvement. We know we might not have enough time for Janeen to describe how Oliver's has converted to an employee ownership, company, which is, which has been happening over the last 3+. Steve has converted that for the last 3+ years. I mean, there are other models to do this. This is, crisis, and these times are a great time to look at your business structure and your business model.
Do you want to add in here? Because this is really, since we only have a couple minutes left, it really makes me think about the creativity and the flexibility in which you decided to completely revamp your business model, Rollie, and that you're still here today. And it ain't easy, I understand, but that's the challenge that local businesses have right now, is to get flexible, get creative, and think of different ways. And there are so many. I wish we could have more time to talk about the many different businesses and organizations that are doing really creative work. But I want to answer your original question, Caroline, about some of the, what are the most important businesses that we could support right now. I just spoke with a downtown Healdsburg restaurant owner who is, you would think they are so positive and doing great. They're at 30% of their average sales. They're at 30%. That is not even 50%, which is what I hope to hear, at least from restaurants. So they are struggling. Retail also is, so I would say the biggest ways that we could support local business are in restaurant and retail. Retail, because they've already started taking this dramatic hit in the increase in online sales that has had a huge impact on their income in the last year. It's been creeping up, but in 2019, it crept up so dramatically that they need our support. We got to remember to actually think about these local physical product stores where we can buy the things that we need. That's another thing that was mentioned in the talk, is that there's some purchases that are going to be canceled, like your trip to Paris or whatever, for people more wealthy. But there's some purchases that are going to be deferred or getting shifted to online. And it's time for us to think, how can we keep those dollars local? So that's kind of what I'm fired up about, is really support the restaurants and the local retail stores as much as we can going into the holidays this year, especially.
That's such a great plug. Thank you. I mean, it is fall. And we are definitely heading to the holiday season in the next couple of months. So thanks for sharing that. Rollie, do you have any other final thoughts? We have about a minute left.
I have a question for both Caroline and Janeen. You're so involved, talented, experienced people. You have a wide diversity of experiences and talents. And yet I sense that you're almost, maybe it's not true, but almost your primary focus is on Shop Local. I mean, is that where you're going to bury your heart? I mean, why are you, you have other places to go. Why are you going to bury your heart there?
You're asking Caroline, right?
Wait,
Yeah.
what, me?
Yeah.
Well, I mean, I did talk about this a little bit about my bio, but my parents, I grew up with parents that are immigrants and owned a grocery store and takeaway business for 10 years. And I started working. My first job was at that store, and our home was connected to that grocery store and restaurant. So I know the hours that it takes to manually live that life for a decade, from the time I was 7 to 15. The store was the primary and center of, when people say work-life balance, there was no such thing. My parents opened the store from 6 a.m. to 10 p.m., 7 days a week. And when there was a cyclone and there was a hurricane in Australia where I grew up, people gravitated. It was an essential business. And my parents gave credit to different families that could not pay their bills. So I understand the hardship that comes with it. And I also see success, because my parents did really kind of did well and reinvented that business over and over. So my heart's in that's where my sort of passion is. I certainly want to re-explore that and re-examine that in Healdsburg, because this is such a gem. This is where my husband Kevin and I have decided to take root, and we love so many of the local businesses. I mean, where can you go where there's a 3-star Michelin restaurant that's walking distance from where we live downtown, that's a 5-minute walk? And where can you get the best croissant pretzels? Where can you go to get natural organic food at Shelton's Market? It's just an incredible ecosystem. If we were to implode right now, the rest of the world were to implode and the rest of Healdsburg and Sonoma County were to be preserved. There's so much to be so grateful for in this community, which is great produce, good people, and just an incredible group of folks that I've met through the pandemic, which is you, Janeen, and Rollie, and everyone else that I've pulsed and featured on Shop Local Healdsburg, that have just said, yes, I want to share my story. So I think that's been compelling for me in terms of why Shop Local has been something I'm trying to explore. And I know we're sort of a little bit over time, but Janeen, did you have anything else of why this is so passionate for you? I mean, you used to be a Healdsburg teacher and this became your passion. I'd love to learn more.
Yeah, we're over time, but I love hearing your story as well. And I feel the same way, is wanting to do good and make a difference and really loving working with the business community.
Yeah. So thank you again, Rollie, for inviting me. I didn't know I would be invited again. And thank you so much, Janeen.
We'll do this more. I mean, my answer is I'm just cheap.
That's true. That's true.
Have another sip, Rollie. Whiskey at least.
Thank you, everyone who joined our conversation. It will be recorded and available also on YouTube, as well as on Healdsburg Tribune's page. If you'd like to learn more about Go Local Sonoma County, please go ahead and type that in, golocalsonomacounty.com. Go to Shop Local Healdsburg as well, which is its own website. We will tweet and share more information about this. Thanks again for everyone's time and just for showing up. And I hope everyone's doing well. And we look forward to the holiday season and supporting local. So
thanks everyone.
And local paper.